The wind came first, hot, gritty, pushing dust through the broken window frame and across the rifle's scope. The warehouse roof around her smelled of rust, rope fiber, and the sea rotting just beyond the breakwater. Below, in the spill of sodium lights, 3 men moved a hooded figure toward a truck that didn't have plates. Captain Lin, Ghost 12. Nguyen lay prone, elbows locked, cheek welded to the stock. Her right hand was steady. Her left, the one with the coiled phoenix and rifle tattoo inked along the forearm, tightened until the skin blanched. Green reticle, 412 meters, wind 6 knots left to right, clean shot. But the hood slipped. Not a man. A boy, 14, maybe 15, eyes wide, taped at the wrists. The nearest gunman angled him in front of his chest, like a human shield, talking into a radio she couldn't hear. On her own net, someone whispered, "Shooter, you're cleared if..." and stopped, because the ROE had said no civilian endangerment, PID or brake contact. Her finger took up slack on the trigger anyway. If she didn't fire, the boy disappeared into a truck and vanished into the city's dark arteries. If she did, she might punch through him to get the gunman. Either way, someone paid. Lynn exhaled, not deciding yet. Cut to black, 6 weeks earlier. The heat hit her as soon as the ramp dropped. Not the gentle coastal warmth she'd grown up with, but the heavy metallic breath of a base that never slept. Fuel, hot generators, sun-baked HESCO barriers. Captain Lin Nguyen adjusted the strap of her duffel and stepped off the transport. Boots thumping against the tarmac painted with sun-faded lines. Overhead, a pair of MH-60s sat shark-like on the pad, rotors still, like they were only pausing between hunts. She kept her sleeves rolled down despite the heat. The phoenix and rifle tattoo on her left forearm stayed hidden. Here, being seen was a liability. Fob saffron sprawled along the edge of a shallow harbor, a joint construction of prefab U.S. modules and allied sectors. The U.S. flag and a blue partner nation flag snapped in the same wind. Lynn caught the glance from the Marines at the perimeter. The quick calculation. Foreign officer, small frame, not a threat. Good. Let them think that. Inside the command building it was cooler, smelling of coffee and plastic binders. CMDRR James Rourke waited by the situation board, sleeves rolled, tan, the kind of man who had spent too many days at sea and liked things simple. He offered a curt nod. "Captain Nguyen," he said, "appreciate you making the trip. You're our liaison/instructor on precision fires." "Affirmative, Commander," she answered, English clipped, neutral. "I'm here to support the task force." Support, not lead, not shoot, not decide. He gestured to the wall map. Coastal routes marked in red, sea lanes in blue, a cluster of yellow tags where hostages had gone missing. "We're running maritime interdiction, hostage recovery. You'll sit in on briefs, help our shooter tighten up for longer ranges over water. Our ROE is US-led. You advise, we execute." A younger operator leaned against a table, Petty Officer Miguel Diaz, she guessed, from the range scores she'd read on the flight. He glanced at her, then at Rourke, like he'd expected someone larger. "Got it," Lynn said. "I'll need access to your range today." Diaz smirked. "Jet lag's not a thing where you're from?" She gave him nothing. "I shoot better before jet lag sets in." That earned a low chuckle from someone in the back. Rourke didn't smile, but his eyes flickered. "We can slot you in 1600. We're validating our own shooter as primary. You can observe." Observe. Sidelined already. This was the dilemma she'd anticipated on the plane. Stay compliant, and they'd keep her as a classroom ornament. Push too hard, and someone would dig until they hit the classified annex with Ghost 12 stamped across it. That would trigger questions from people she didn't want alerted to her location. So she settled for something in between. If I may, Commander, sniper overwatch on literal targets is subject to mirage and surface reflection. If I'm to advise effectively, I should demonstrate baseline. Rourke studied her, weighing how much trouble she'd be. Finally. Fine. 1600, show us baseline. Outside, she found her assigned quarters, stowed her gear, checked her rifle case. They'd shipped her platform ahead. Custom bolt action, suppressed, optics she trusted. She ran hands over the weapon the way some people greeted dogs. Reassurance, familiarity. Her sleeve pulled back a centimeter. The orange-gold curve of the phoenix's wing flashed. She yanked the fabric down. At 1600, the range shimmered with heat. The SEALs lounged behind the firing line, relaxed in that predatory way. Hydrating, watching, never quite off. Diaz was on the gun, running a Mk-13, calling his own wind. He was good. His groups at 700 meters were inside a chest-sized steel. The spotter called impacts. Rourke nodded toward her case. Let's see what your baseline looks like, Captain. Lynn lay prone, built her position with unhurried precision. Nose to charging handle, buttstock snug in the pocket of her shoulder, bipod settled. She glassed the target line. Mirage was running left. Flags showed a steady breeze. She didn't explain her calls out loud. She wasn't here to teach yet. She was here to show. She broke the first shot. Steel rang downrange, clean and centered. Someone whistled. Diaz glanced over, just a flicker, recalculating. She ran 2 more rounds, adjusting half mil for the shifting heat. 3 for 3, all center mass. Same measured breathing, same expressionless face. Copy that, Rourke said softly. It wasn't praise so much as acknowledgement. As she rolled to a knee, her cuff rode up again. This time Diaz saw it. The stylized bird wrapped around a rifle barrel, the subtle 12 in the feathers. He snorted. Nice tattoo, Captain. Little dramatic for an instructor, yeah? A couple of the guys chuckled, assuming it was vanity ink. Lynn gave them the smallest of smiles, the kind that didn't deny and didn't confirm. Sometimes people mistake survival for drama, she said. Rourke's eyes narrowed, just a fraction, like the line of a memory starting to surface, but not yet taking shape. The ready room was cold enough to make sweat feel like ice. Metal benches, weapons racks, whiteboard with tide tables and sunrise, sunset scribbled in dry erase. Lynn sat at the end of a bench, quietly breaking down her rifle. Routine made everything smoother. Bolt out, check lugs, wipe carbon, run a cloth down the bore. Around her, the SEALs moved louder than they needed to. That pack energy before an op, even if today was only a harbor recon. She'd rolled her sleeves to mid-forearm because of the aircon. Mistake. Hey, there it is. One of the operators, Kono, she thought, said. The mythical bird gun. Diaz leaned over from the next bench, smirk already loaded. Tell me that wasn't off a Pinterest board. A couple of the guys laughed. Not cruel, just the easy teasing of a unit that didn't yet consider her one of them. The Phoenix wrapped around the rifle barrel stared back at all of them in bright, disciplined lines. The 12 was small enough most people missed it. Diaz did not. Or is that like Badge of Honor Inc.? Diaz added, shoot 3 terrorists, get 1 free tattoo. Lynn didn't look up. I had it done a long time ago. That's not a no, Kono said. She reassembled the bolt, seated it with a clean push. The simplest move was to tug the sleeve down, hide it again, let the moment pass. But hiding would make it a bigger thing. And telling them what it actually marked, an unsanctioned counter-sniper kill that saved a partnered detachment, would light up every classification warning that had brought her here under a gray cover. So she went for the third option: make the jokes irrelevant. Rourke walked in then, tablet in hand. "Gear check, then comms," he said. "We're not leaving the wire, but you treat it like we are." Weapons were laid out on the bench in front of each operator. Diaz's MK-13 Mod 7 sat oiled and arrogant, long barrel and folding stock, chambered in 300 Win Mag. Good glass, good dope. Lynn had read its maintenance log already. He was proud of that rifle. Rourke's eyes swept the room and snagged briefly on Lynn's exposed ink. One brow rose, not quite a smile. "New art we should all get, Captain?" he asked, voice dry. "It helps me remember," she said. "What? That you like birds?" "That shot stay with you." For half a heartbeat the room cooled. There was a weight to the way she'd said, "it." Diaz's grin faltered, then came back, thinner. He picked up his data card. Rourke flicked to the whiteboard. "Weather's heating the tarmac. If we were shooting from the pier out to the bay this morning, what's your wind call?" Diaz didn't hesitate. 6, maybe 8 knots left to right over water, less over land. I'd call .3 mil at 600. Rourke tipped his head toward Lynn. "Captain?" She hadn't even looked outside. She'd felt the vibration in the building when she walked in, heard the flag outside cracking a certain way. Closer to 9, sustained at the surface over water. Mirage would run left fast. I'd hold 4 and be ready to correct. Diaz snorted. "We're not in the South China Sea, ma'am." "We're also not shooting from air-conditioned buildings," she said, tone still mild. "Your gust will push more than you think." Rourke paused, checked the live feed on his tablet from the pier weather station. His mouth twitched. 9 knots, he confirmed. Left to right. Silence, then a low damn from Kono. That was the turn. Not dramatic, not cinematic. Just the click of perception in a room full of professionals. She hadn't argued about the tattoo. She just demonstrated she could read wind without seeing the water. Diaz busied himself with his rifle. "Well, maybe the tattoo is earned," he muttered, mostly to the barrel. Lynn rolled her sleeve down now, slow, like it was simply for comfort. "Ink is cheap," she said. "Ranging wrong is expensive." They moved on to comms checks. She listened, memorizing call signs. Who answered too fast? Who lagged? Rourke watched her longer than necessary. When they were done and the operators filtered out toward the motor pool, he lingered. "Captain." His voice was lower now, conversation level. "Your file says you did instructor time, partner force side. Doesn't say where you got your edge." She met his gaze. Third person she could do in reports. Face to face, she had to choose every word. "My country has long coastlines, Commander. We learned to shoot over water early." He studied her, clearly unconvinced that was the whole story, but not willing to push in a room monitored for training traffic. "Uh-huh." He turned to leave, then stopped, almost casual. "Where'd you actually train?" There it was, the hook catching. Not accusation, not yet, just curiosity sharpening into suspicion. Lynn shouldered her rifle case. "Enough places," she said. "To know jokes about tattoos don't matter when rounds start coming back." She walked out before he could ask more, pulse steady, but inside she logged it. Rourke was starting to look past the cover story, which meant she'd need to control when he found out who Ghost 12 really was. Outside in the Gulf light, the wind really was 9 knots, left to right. The intel room was dark except for the blue wash of the projector and the faint glow from laptops. A map of the coastline ran across the wall. Thin, jagged lines of inlets and rusting ports, offshore platforms like dots of rust in the water. Lynn sat 2 seats down from Rourke, notebook closed, hands folded. Listening was more useful than writing right now. Chief Petty Officer Hall, the intel lead, tapped through slides with the confidence of someone who had briefed too many tired operators. "Target set we're calling Spearline," he said. "Primary activity, maritime smuggling, HVT transit, and ransom logistics. Nodes shift every 72 hours. Broker believed to be male, mid-40s, educated, likes to keep distance." Photos appeared. Grainy shots of a warehouse, a battered white pickup, a pier at dusk. Hall moved on. "They've started using juveniles as couriers and runners at the docks, likely because they draw less attention. We don't assess their combatants." Lynn's gaze sharpened. Juveniles. He said it like traffic cones. Rourke sat back, arms crossed, expression neutral. Hall clicked again. "ROE is unchanged. PID required. If civilians are present, we de-escalate or break contact. We are not dumping rounds into trucks full of kids to get one bad guy." That, at least, was right. But it was presented like a footnote. "Question," Lynn said, voice even. "Do we have confirmation whether the juveniles are being used as shields or only as low-level support?" Hall glanced at her, then at Rourke like, "Your guest." "We don't have imagery of them being used as shields, Captain. Mostly movement, carrying sat phones, money, medical. We assess it's opportunistic." "Opportunistic can turn into tactical when cornered," she said. "If they know we won't fire through a miner, they can use that." A couple of the SEALs shifted, not argument, just interest. Hall shrugged. "Sure, but that's worst case. Our focus is the broker. Grab him, the line collapses." There it was, the gap between what was tactically convenient and what was morally likely. Lynn could push. She could lay out exactly how, in another desert with another name, insurgents had started with unarmed teenage spotters and ended with boys in vests because they'd learned coalition forces would not shoot children. She could tell them that once the enemy understood the shape of your restraint, they would weaponize it. But she also knew the room. A foreign captain getting loud about kids could be filed under cultural sensitivity and ignored, so she chose precision instead. "Then I request overwatch on the next approach to a Spearline node," she said. "High-angle positions allow for cleaner PID and discrimination. If juveniles are in proximity, I can call no fire earlier." Hall opened his mouth, but Rourke spoke first. "That's workable. We can slot her on overwatch." Hall didn't argue with the OIC. He just clicked to the next slide. This one was uglier. 2 bodies on a pier, both armed, both with similar tactical vests to what the SEALs wore. "We have one more wrinkle," Hall said. "Source reporting from local liaison suggests Spearline occasionally hires a precision shooter. No full profile, but we've got 2 incidents. Security elements dropped from distance during past interdictions. Could be coincidence. Could be a trained marksman providing overwatch to them." A picture of the pier zoomed in. Tiny crater on a concrete bollard near eye level. Lynn felt her shoulders tense. An enemy who could see the battlefield from above could also see hostages, shields, children. Could complicate every ROE decision. "Do we have range estimates?" she asked. 750 to 800 over water, Hall said. "Maybe suppressed, maybe not. Windy day. Our guy missed the first time, corrected, then hit." "Not amateur," Lynn murmured. Rourke heard that, turned his head slightly. "You think he's good?" "I think he's practiced. she said, which means he'll expect us to stay within ROE. He can create situations we can't shoot through. That quieted the room more than talk of the broker. Hall finished the brief. Timelines, comms windows, liaison constraints. When it wrapped, chairs scraped back. Operators filed out, already translating slides into movement. Rourke stayed. "You locked on the word juveniles pretty fast," he said once they were alone. "I've seen it used before," she replied. "As shields?" "As leverage." He studied her for a beat. "Overwatch is yours. Don't make me regret it." "You won't," she said. She left the room with the shape of the next mission forming in her mind. Get high, get eyes early, protect the kids and the op. If Spearline had a shooter, she wanted to be the one looking down the glass at him before he ever saw her. There was someone else out there who could punch holes in people from 800 meters, and she'd just volunteered to be the barrier. By late afternoon, the Gulf looked like hammered glass, bright, restless, tricky. The range they were using today wasn't the dusty inland one, but the improvised coastal lane, an elevated firing platform facing out toward a line of floating steel targets anchored just beyond the harbor mouth. Shooting over water was honest. It showed every mistake. Rourke stood behind the shooters with a pair of binos, expression flat. "This is not to prove you can hit stuff," he said. "This is to prove you can hit stuff when it matters. Wind, shimmer, bad angles. I need one primary overwatch. You make it obvious today, or you don't get it." Diaz was already on the mat, lying in that loose, confident sprawl of someone who spent weekends winning competitions. Beside him, a second SEAL sniper, Olsen, checked his data card. Lynn set her rifle down last, deliberate, like she had all the time in the world. The wind came quartering from the left, pushed harder over open water than it had on the tarmac earlier. At 800 meters, it would move a bullet more than most people wanted to admit. Flags on the pier said 10 knots. Mirage said it was gusting. "Target 3, 800, Rourke said. "Shooter ready, Diaz." "Up," Diaz said, cheek welded to his stock. He fired. The round smacked steel, low right. A good hit, kill zone enough. "Impact," Rourke confirmed. Olsen went next. His shot rang too, slightly higher, cleaner. Then Rourke looked at Lynn. "Captain?" She slid prone, built her position. Through her scope, the target bobbed microscopically with the swell. The sun off the water threw glare. She angled her hat brim just so. She could have fired the same shot Diaz did and been done. That would keep her comfortably very good. But very good didn't stop enemy snipers. Very good didn't protect children being pulled in front of guns. She watched the Mirage a second longer. The heat waves weren't uniform. They bent harder midway, where the water met a darker current. That was the tricky part. The bullet would spend most of its flight in that band. "What's your hold, Captain?" Rourke asked, testing. She could have said .4, adjust. Instead, she said, .5 left for the gust. Expect to come back .1. Diaz muttered, "Spicy." Lynn breathed out, let her heartbeat settle. On the exhale, she pressed. The rifle bucked gently. Half a second later, the steel rang. Dead center. A single authoritative note that cut through wind and generator hum. Rourke lowered his binos. Diaz actually lifted his head. "That was generous on wind," Diaz said, not quite accusing. Lynn stayed prone, called what she'd seen. Mirage was running harder over the midband. If you don't account for that, a shielded target lives. That last part wasn't necessary, but she wanted it in the air. "I am thinking about shields. I am thinking about angles that save people." Rourke nodded slowly. "Again," he said. They ran it at 750, then 820, then on a smaller plate that simulated a partial exposure, what a head and shoulders behind a hostage might look like. Diaz started to widen, needing small corrections. Olsen stayed solid. Lynn built a pattern. No drama, no celebration, just repeated, precise violence at distance. By the time the sun slid lower, it was obvious to anyone with eyes who'd owned the lane. Rourke let the silence sit, then addressed the group. "Primary overwatch for Spearline goes to Captain Nguyen," he said. "No build-up, no explanation. Diaz, you're secondary. Olsen, you float." Diaz's jaw tightened. Not rage, professional frustration. "Copy." Lynn sat up, wiped down her rifle, face unreadable. Inside, though, she felt the click of a piece dropping into place. High ground secured. As the others packed up, Rourke drifted closer. Up close, he smelled like sunblock and salt. "You read wind like someone who's done it under fire," he said quietly. She met his eyes. "Wind is wind." "Yeah," he said. "But people who haven't had bullets coming back tend to round down." He walked off before she had to respond. She saw him, a minute later, step into the ops building with his tablet, thumb moving over the screen, pulling up her file again. Before the gulf, before Fob Saffron and Rourke's narrowed eyes, there was a sun-blasted city with no name in her official record. It smelled of burnt tires and cardamom, of concrete baking at 45 degrees. Lynn lay on the second floor of an abandoned school, muzzle poked through a jagged window, watching a crossroads where their partnered assault team was pinned. "Ghost 12, this is actual. We're taking accurate fire from the west rooftop. Can you ID?" The voice in her ear was tight but not panicked. They trusted her glass. She swept the scope. The west rooftop was a low, flat structure, cinder block parapet, a rusted water tank, laundry lines strung like tripwires. No muzzle flash, no grown fighter. Then she saw him. He was small, 14 maybe, in a faded soccer jersey 2 sizes too big. He lay behind the parapet like someone had placed him there, not like he'd chosen it. Beside him, an old-looking radio. He would pop up, look over the ledge toward the assault element, then say something into the radio. Every time he did, fire from a hidden shooter 2 streets over corrected, walked closer to her team. Not the shooter, the spotter. Her stomach turned cold. "Actual Ghost 12, she whispered. "Spotter is juvenile male. Repeat, juvenile. Located on west rooftop, grid, mark." She laced the edge, gave the numbers. "Shooter is elsewhere, taking his correction." Silence for half a breath. Then command came back, clipped. "Can you neutralize spotter?" "Affirm, but target is underage. Recommend we maneuver instead." Below, someone shouted in the local language. The kid flinched like he was being ordered. His small hands fumbled with the radio, eyes wide, afraid and obedient. He popped up again, called adjustment. Rounds snapped over the Allied team's heads. One man cried out. The command net changed tone, the way it did when people started bleeding. "Ghost 12, this is actual. That spotter is enabling accurate fire on friendlies. You are cleared to engage. Say again, cleared to engage." Her jaw clenched. "Actual, target is non-combatant, likely coerced." "Negative. He is acting as fire control. Engage. That's an order." Doctrine said the same thing. If a spotter is directly enabling lethal fire on friendlies and no other option exists, the spotter becomes a valid target. Doctrine didn't show you the face of the spotter. Doctrine didn't care about soccer jerseys. Lynn watched him pop up again, hands shaking. Maybe someone below had a gun on him. Maybe he'd been told his family would die if he didn't help. Her team couldn't see that. She could. She could disobey. She could say wind shifted, lost PID, sorry. In the seconds she bought with that lie, the enemy sniper could find her team leader's head. Or she could take the shot and live with it for the rest of her life. There it was, the same shape as the rooftop dilemma to come. No right answer, only fewer dead bodies. She exhaled. Copy actual, engaging. She dialed nothing. The range was short. She held just off the center of his head because she knew her rifle, knew the way the round would snap flat at this distance. Her finger took up the trigger, smooth, no hitch. The boy rose again, mouth forming a word into the radio. Lin fired. He fell backward, limp, the radio clattering beside him. Below, the incoming fire on her team stopped almost immediately. The hidden sniper, blind now, broke contact. The alleyway noise changed from sharp and lethal to scrambling retreat. Actual Ghost 12. Spotter neutralized. Fire ceased. Solid copy. You saved our asses, Ghost 12. She didn't answer. Her eye stayed in the scope, watching the still, small body on hot concrete. No weapon. Just the radio. Later, in debrief, they were professional. The order had been lawful. The target was actively enabling hostile fire. Her shot had saved at least 2 men. Her CO had even said, "You did what was required." Required didn't mean survivable. That night, she sat on her bunk in a cramped forward housing unit. Needle and ink burned into her memory. She'd had the Phoenix and rifle done on leave not long after. Part defiance, part atonement. A mark to remind herself that every round had a ghost attached. Back in present time, at Fob Saffron, the memory snapped off like a film reel burning through. Lynn sat up in her narrow bed, sweat cooling on her neck despite the AC. Her left hand was already on her forearm where the tattoo lay under fabric, fingers pressing hard enough to hurt. Shots stay with you. And that was why, when a slide said juveniles used as couriers, she heard instead, "They will put a child between you and the bad man and dare you to stay human." They built the target out of plywood and stubborn imagination. Shipping containers stood in for dockside warehouses. Yellow tape marked hostage rooms. A blue barrel with a tarp was the speedboat they'd pretend to interdict. Overhead, the sun sat hard and white. Lynn climbed the scaffold they were using as her overwatch perch, rifle slung, headset crackling with test chatter. "Check, check, Overwatch, this is Viking Actual," Rourke said from ground level. "You got eyes?" "Overwatch copies," Lynn answered, settling behind her glass. From up here, she could see the whole mock compound. The entry stack, the breach point, the painted outline of a no-fire corridor that ran from the hostage room to the egress. "I have full picture." "ROE for this rehearsal is same as OP," Rourke said to everyone. "PID, no shot through hostages, no shot into no-fire zones. If Overwatch calls you off, you obey. We clear?" A chorus of copy. Below, the seals shook out. Diaz was in the stack today, not on the gun. He'd swapped so she could practice calling for him. Another operator, lean, long-limbed name-patch Briggs, rolled his shoulders like he'd rather be doing this with real bad guys. "On the real thing," Rourke added, glancing up at Lynn. "We'll be doing this wet. Today it's dry, no sims. Don't get sloppy because nobody's shooting FX at you." Lynn adjusted her scope to a lower magnification. For rehearsal, she didn't need to read wind. She needed to read people. "Viking, Overwatch," she said. "Hostage room has 2 friendlies marked. Corridor from room to dockside is red, no fire." "Copy red corridor," Rourke said. "Stand by." Viking moving. They flowed like water, stacking, breaching, clearing plywood rooms with the crisp efficiency of men who had done this in places that smelled worse and paid more. Lynn tracked them, calling quiet confirms. Overwatch has 2 tangos in container 2. Clear line. Viking copies. Briggs peeled off to take the left angle. He was fast, sharp, the kind who liked momentum. He also had the worst angle on the no-fire corridor. Lynn saw it developing. The line of his rifle, the direction of his step. If this were real, and if a bad guy dragged a hostage through that corridor, Briggs would have a half-second to decide not to shoot. She decided for him. Overwatch, no shot, no shot, red corridor crossed. She snapped into the net. Briggs halted, muzzle dipping. The whole run stuttered for half a second. In real life, that half-second could mean the difference between a clean grab and chaos. But it was better to break in training. Below, Briggs tilted his head up toward the scaffold. It was clear, he said, not quite arguing, but close. Negative, Lynn said, tone staying level. Your muzzle entered red. If that's a child, you just flagged them. That was a barrel, Briggs said. It won't be a barrel on the night, she said. There was a pause while everyone pretended not to choose sides. Then Rourke cut in. Overwatch call stands, he said. Reset that piece. Run it again. Briggs's shoulders tightened, but he reset. That was the line, right there. She could rein them in, but only if the OIC backed her. Today he did. They ran it again. This time Briggs exaggerated his swing to stay clear. Lynn logged that too. Operators could adapt if you made it matter. When the run was over, they clustered in the shade of a container for the hot wash. Everyone was sweating through tan shirts. Lynn climbed down. Slung. Her rifle stood a little off to the side. Present, not imposing. Rourke pointed at her. That's why we rehearse with ROE, he said to the group. Because on target you will not have time to remember what's red. She will. You listen. Briggs blew out a breath. Copy, he said, not thrilled but not insubordinate. Diaz shot Lynn a look that said, fair call. That was new. Before they could break, Hall hustled across the yard with a tablet held high like it was bad news. Skipper, he called to Rourke. Update from Liaison Channel. That shooter we talked about? He's not hypothetical anymore. Rourke took the tablet, scanned. His jaw twitched. Then he looked up at Lynn. Spearline used a precision asset on another crew 2 nights ago, he said, loud enough for her to hear. Same range band. Overwatch for our op just went from nice to have to we don't roll without it. Lynn nodded once. The rehearsal had done what she needed, established her authority to call people off. Now, with an enemy sniper in play, nobody would question why the foreign captain was on the highest perch. Night along the harbor was never truly dark. Sodium lamps washed the pier in amber, and the city behind it glowed a dull orange. The water, though, was black, flat, absorbing starlight. Lynn lay on a rooftop 2 buildings back from the target key. Bipod dug into rough concrete, rifle angled toward the approach lane where a small fishing boat was supposed to meet Spearline's courier. In her ear, the net was calm. Viking 1 in position, Rourke said from the assault element. Say again, we're set. Overwatch copies. I have eyes on pier, east to west, Lynn replied. From here she could see the rusted bollards, a white panel van idling too long, and 2 men loitering like bored dock workers. Their outlines were wrong. Hips weighted, shoulders alert. ROE for tonight was crystal. Positive ID on weapons. No shot through civilians. Capture courier alive if possible. The kind of gentle approach that fell apart the second an unseen rifle joined the party. Lynn kept her scope at mid-power, scanning for glass glint, an odd silhouette, anything above first floor. Spearline's last strike had come from elevation. Boat approaching from southeast, Diaz whispered from his secondary position, lower, closer. Single outboard, 2 packs. Copy, Rourke said. Stand by to move on my... The crack came a half-second before the whine. A round punched into the concrete half a meter from where Diaz's head would have been if he'd been an inch higher. Contact! Sniper! Diaz hissed, flattening. Lynn was already moving. She hadn't seen muzzle flash, smart shooter, but she'd heard the angle. Farther along the harbor curve, higher than her, using the line of warehouse roofs. Overwatch has possible shooter, northwest roof line, building with twin. Vents, she said, voice still level. Range 850 to 875. Shooter is elevated. Another round snapped down, this time walking toward the SEAL's covert approach route. The enemy was correcting off impact, same pattern as the pier photos. If she let this continue, the intercept would turn into a scramble and the courier would bolt. If she stayed too low profile, someone got hit. This was exactly the moment she'd wanted to own. She rolled her rifle, found the building, corrugated roof, 2 vents like teeth, a darker lump at the edge. Mirage at night was less of a problem, but wind off the water nudged flags on moored boats. 6, maybe 7 knots, right to left. At this distance over water, that would drift. Overwatch, can you silence that? Rourke said. Not an order, trust. Working, she said. The enemy shooter was good. He'd chosen a firing point that put her at a slight oblique, less target to see. She waited. Patience was a weapon, too. He fired again. The muzzle flash was faint, but at 10x she caught the blur, the momentary disturbance at the roof's edge. Got you. Overwatch engaging counter-sniper, she called. Clear my line. Nobody talked. Everyone stayed low, trusting her. She dialed .3 mil right to counter the wind, held a hair high for the angle and pressed. The rifle bucked. Her suppressor ate the roar, but the rooftop's edge spat a tiny spark, where her round hit meat and metal together. Downrange, a figure toppled sideways, rifle skittering. The enemy's firing stopped. Shooter down, she said. Say again, counter-sniper neutralized. Diaz let out a breath over the net. You just saved me a new face, Overwatch. Focus on the pier, she said. Target boat is docking. In the adrenaline of the shot, she'd shifted her body forward. The sling of her rifle dragged against the concrete lip, scraping. Her mask, pulled up over her nose against the night breeze, slipped down to her chin. At the same time, the sleeve of her left arm rode up as she worked the bolt, exposing the phoenix and rifle tattoo to anyone looking. Rourke, sliding along the pier wall below with his element, looked up to confirm her position. Just a reflex, operators matching guns to call signs. His gaze snagged on the bright curve on her forearm, illuminated for a second by the spill of a harbor light. He stopped, just half a step, just long enough for his brain to say, I've seen that ink before, on a report, on a debrief from a different war. Viking, move, Hall urged from the ops room. Rourke blinked and kept going. Viking moving. The rest of the intercept went by the book. The fishing boat bumped the pier, seals flooded the quay, the courier was shoved face down and zip-tied before he could squeak. Lynn stayed on glass, sweeping for a second shooter. There was none. When exfil was called and the net relaxed, Rourke keyed up just for her. Overwatch, he said. tone different now. That shot, where'd you learn to do that? She pulled her mask fully back up, rolled her sleeve down with her offhand. Enough places, she said, same answer as before. But this time she knew it hadn't worked. This time he'd seen the mark. And men like Rourke didn't forget the name attached to Ghost 12. They brought the courier in fast, heads down to the interrogation block. The harbor smell followed them, diesel and salt and old fish, until the air conditioners swallowed it. Operators dispersed to de-kit. Night ops always left a hum in the base, a barely contained electricity. Lynn, having already turned in her radio and logged her shot, headed for the small comms room where she kept her personal kit. Rourke was waiting in the corridor. He wasn't angry. That would have been easier. He was precise, jaw set, eyes alert, like he was approaching a target whose range he finally knew. "Captain Nguyen," he said, "with me." She followed him into an empty briefing room. Lights low, screen dark, just the projector smell and the faint thrum of generators. He closed the door, didn't sit. "What you did out there was not liaison-level shooting," he said. "That was counter-sniper at distance, under time, at night, over water." She met his gaze. "You wanted the enemy shooter stopped." "Yeah," he said. "And you stopped him. With a single round. After reading wind in the dark." He stepped closer, voice dropping. "Then there's the other thing." He tapped his own forearm where he'd seen her ink. "That mark," he said. "I saw it once in a classified annex, years ago. Story about an allied female shooter who saved a U.S. element in a city we don't admit we were in. The report called her Ghost 12. He tilted his head. "That you?" This was the hinge. She could shrug, laugh it off, call it coincidence, but he'd seen too much. If she lied now, every call she made in Overwatch would be second-guessed, and the whole point of coming here, of swallowing jokes, of being the small foreign captain, was so she could be on the roof when Spearline used a child. She exhaled. "Yes," she said. "I was Ghost 12. Rourke stared at her for a long beat. Some of the lines in his face shifted. Not surprise, not anymore, but recognition and something like guilt. "You let my guys make fun of that tattoo," he said quietly. "I needed to stay under your radar," she said. "If command made this official, there would be more paperwork than operations." "You were on the ground for that spotter op," he said, piecing it together. "The one where a kid was feeding shots onto friendlies." Her throat tightened. "You read that." "I read everything about it," he said. "Because whoever pulled that trigger saved our people. And because it was ugly." He let that sit. She appreciated that he didn't say, "I'm sorry you had to do it." Apologies from people who hadn't been behind the glass were useless. "So why the cover?" he asked. "Why send you here as instructor?" "Because some people would object to a foreign shooter running lethal Overwatch on US-led ops," she said. "Because my government wanted to help quietly. Because the last time I did this openly, it got political." He nodded, absorbing. "And if I put in a note that the shooter tonight was Ghost 12? "You put it in the classified section," she said. "Not the general sit-rep. You keep it need to know. If this becomes a thing, someone will decide it's cleaner to remove me." "And you don't want to be removed," he said. "No," she said. "Because you still don't know how far Spearline will go with minors." As if summoned, a knock hit the door. Hall stuck his head in, tablet in hand, eyes flicking between them. He sensed tension, but didn't comment. "Sorry to interrupt, Skipper," Hall said. "We just got an update from Shoreside Liaison. Spearline's pushing a bigger movement in 48. Not just commodities. He glanced at Lynn. They've got 3 underage in the chain. Likely hostages or leverage. There it was. Confirmation. The thing she'd tried to prep them for on slide 3. Rourke looked back at her. The calculation was faster now. He knew exactly what she was, and exactly why that mattered. Then we keep her on glass, he said to Hall, decisive. We don't run that op without her. Hall raised his brows. Roger that. When they were alone again, Rourke leaned against the table, arms crossed. Less adversarial now, more aligned. You know, he said, if I'd known you were Ghost 12 on day 1, I would have put you on every roof. If you'd known on day 1, she said, I wouldn't have made it to day 2. He huffed a short breath, not quite a laugh. Fair. He pushed off the table. All right, Captain Nguyen. We do it your way. You stay in Overwatch. You call the red. And I won't pretend I don't know who I'm putting up there. She nodded. Then we have a chance to bring those kids out alive. By morning, the mission board in the ops room looked like a nervous system. Lines of movement, arrows, timing blocks. Hall had built the skeleton fast. Convoy track here, intercept here, assault element here, QRF on standby. The broker was the fat red icon in the center, labeled Spearline Hub. The 3 smaller yellow icons, Juvenile 1, 2, 3, sat off to the side like afterthoughts. Lynn stood with arms folded, watching. Rourke was beside her, mug of coffee cooling in his hand. All right, Hall said, pointer tapping the screen. Local liaison says tomorrow night, 2100 Z, they push a multi-vehicle package from the inland warehouse to the port holding shed. Our window is narrow before they load to sea. We hit the convoy at the port, not on the road. Less collateral, fewer unknowns. He zoomed in. Primary objective, capture broker. Secondary, secure juveniles present. Lynn spoke before the hierarchy hardened. Correction, she said. Co-primary, secure juveniles and capture broker. Hall looked over his shoulder. Captain, with respect, we lose the broker. This whole network regrows. We lose the kids, it's tragic. We lose the broker, it's operational failure. She didn't raise her voice. We shoot through a child, it's strategic failure. That line hung in the room. It wasn't melodrama, it was true. One photo of a dead teenager with a Western 7.62 hole in him could burn the whole liaison arrangement to the ground. Rourke set his mug down. She's right, he said. We're not putting rounds past kids to get one smuggler. Hall exhaled, adjusted. Fine. Then we build in a time buffer for Overwatch to do PID before we breach. I need height, Lynn said. Same as last op. At least 8 meters above ground to see into vehicles before the assault element commits. If the juveniles are used as living doors, I can call no-go. Hall flipped to a satellite image of the port. Best elevation is this warehouse roof, flat, corrugated, but it's farther back, 900 meters from the shed. 900 is fine, she said. I've shot farther. Hall gave her a look that said, yeah, we all saw that. ROE is updated for this op, he said to the room. New line reads, no shot through non-combatant. No shot when non-combatant is used as primary shield. Overwatch authorized to call abort on breach if non-combatant is at risk. That was big. That made her voice more than advisory. It made it law on the net. Be advised, Hall added. Weather model shows humidity spike after 2000, maybe offshore haze. Might get some diffusion on lights. Long glass could get murky. Lynn's jaw flexed. Haze meant light scattering, which meant silhouettes blurred at distance. It took away the clean, crisp edges she preferred for PID. "Can we bump earlier?" she asked. "Beat the haze?" "Negative," Hall said. "Convoy doesn't move earlier. We jump when they jump." So that was the constraint. She'd have to read kids through soup. She stepped closer to the screen, traced the convoy route with a fingertip. "If they arrive and park in a herringbone, I need a second angle to see into the blindside vehicles. Put Diaz on the lower rooftop here." She tapped a shorter building offset from hers. "He feeds me what he can't see. I make final calls." Diaz, leaning in the doorway, nodded. "I can do that." Hall hesitated. "That puts 2 shooters in play." "It puts 2 eyes in play," she said. "I shoot if forced. He observes. We need cross-pollination on PID." Rourke backed her again. "We do it," he said. "She gets the high roof, Diaz gets the low. I'll run the assault from ground." Hall wasn't happy, too many moving parts, but he adjusted the plan. "Okay, ingress by 2 elements, overwatch in position NLT 20 minutes prior. No fires unless called. If broker barricades with kids, we negotiate or we follow on with non-lethal. We do not ventilate the room." He clicked to the weather slide. A cloud icon sat sulkily over the port. "Last bit. You're not going to love this. Offshore layer could push in a thin mist from the east. Not rain. Just enough to mess your detail." Lynn calculated quickly. Moisture in the air, plus sodium lights, plus vehicle exhaust. It would create halos around movement. Small shoulders, small heads would be harder to separate visually from taller figures pressed in close. "Then I will need more time before green," she said. "You don't get to say go the second wheels stop. I look first." Rourke looked at her, then at Hall. "You heard her." Hall spread his hands. "Fine. Overwatch has veto." That was the win. She kept her face neutral, but inside something unclenched. She had the authority she'd come for. As everyone broke to start loading gear and staging ladders, Rourke caught up to her. "You know," he said quietly, "I've had foreign officers come through here who just want to watch us work. You're the first one to rewrite the op." "I'm not rewriting," she said. "I'm making sure we don't repeat something I can't undo." He studied her for a second. "Then let's hope the weather cooperates." But she knew better than to hope. In her mind's eye, she already saw it. Mist, bad light, men with guns dragging kids between them. A scenario tailored to punish any shooter with a conscience. Fob Saffron was never truly silent, but there was a particular hush before night ops. Lights dimmed in the motor pool, radios turned down, people moving with purpose instead of swagger. Lynn sat at a metal table outside the armory, field stripping her rifle for the 3rd time that day. Not because it needed it, because the ritual put her head in the right place. Barrel clean, bolt smooth, glass spotless. Control what you can before you stare at what you can't. She just snapped the bolt back in when a shadow fell across the table. Captain. Diaz. Sleeves rolled, hair still damp from a shower, carbine slung. He looked less like the guy who joked about her tattoo and more like a man trying to square a ledger. "Petty officer," she said. He hooked a thumb at the empty seat. "Can I?" She nodded. He sat, elbows on knees, eyes on the rifle. "So," he said, "you're, not just an instructor." "No," she said. "No point lying now." He huffed. "Kinda made me look like an ass." "You made yourself look like an ass," she said, but without heat. "You assumed ink is decoration." "Fair," he said, a corner of his mouth lifting. Then the smile died. "Thing is, tomorrow I'm on the lower roof. You're gonna be calling red. I need to know if there's anything else I should expect. Like you pulling off miracle shots nobody taught us in school. She considered him. Diaz was good. He'd adapted in the rehearsal, taken correction. He deserved something. I'm not going to do anything magical, she said. I'm going to do what we rehearsed. PID, protect the children, then let you and Commander Rourke move. The difference is, I have seen what happens when you don't take those extra 2 seconds. His eyes narrowed. That op, the one the commander mentioned. She nodded once. You had to shoot a kid? I had to shoot someone who was being used the way Spearline will use these 3, she said, and I will do a lot to avoid that happening again. Diaz looked down at the table. When he spoke again, his voice was lower. Okay. Then tomorrow, if you call no shot, I back you, even if it screws our timing. Timing can be fixed, she said. Dead children can't. He blew out a breath. Decision made. Roger that. The armory door opened and a supply sergeant rolled out a cart. Nguyen, Diaz, last check for optics batteries and IR strobes. They both stood. Lynn took batteries, tucked them into her admin pouch. She inspected her suppressor, clicked it on to feel the threads. Diaz ran his carbine through function check. Safe, semi, burst. Then his own spotting optic. The smaller glass he'd used from the lower roof. You still good with the building I picked for you? She asked. Yeah, he said. It's ugly, but I can see the blind side of the convoy. I'll feed you campfire stories about who's sitting where. Good. She hesitated, then added, if the haze is worse than forecast, I might need you to be my eyes, not just confirm. He grinned. So I get to boss you around? You get to tell me what you see, she corrected. You don't get to boss me around. From across the yard, Rourke called, 30-minute brief in the talk. Diaz slung his rifle. Hey, he said, pausing. For what it's worth. I'm glad it's you on the tall roof. If they put one of us up there, we'd probably make a dumber choice. Maybe, she said. Maybe not. He left, jogging toward the 2OC. Lynn watched him go, then picked up her rifle and followed. Inside, the mission board was already updated. Convoy track flashing, weather overlay a sour yellow. Hall stood at the front, tapping his tablet with irritation. Update, he said as soon as they were in. Our source in port control says Spearline's loading team is ahead of schedule tonight. They expect to start staging vehicles 30 minutes earlier. Lynn felt her muscles tighten. Less time to climb, less time to see. Rourke glanced at her. You still make the roof? I make it, she said. I'll just have less light to separate them. Then we move now, Rourke said to the room. Wheels in 10. Overwatch departs first. So much for quiet. The mission was coming ready or not, and whatever calm she'd built at the table would have to travel with her up the ladder to the roof. They rolled out with the kind of clipped speed that meant everybody had already rehearsed this twice in their heads. Lynn rode in the back of a low-profile pickup with 2 local security attachments and a ladder lashed to the bed. The Port District lights shimmered yellow in the humid air, halos around sodium lamps just like the forecast said. Not great. Haze made everything look soft-edged. She wore dark utility gear, no rank showing, rifle broken down in a nondescript case. Being the foreign shooter was easier if no one on the street saw a foreign shooter. Overwatch, this is Viking Actual. Rourke's voice came over her earpiece, ground convoy still a few blocks behind. Status? Overwatch is 2 mics from building, she said. Haze is present. I will need extra PID time. Copy, you got it. The pickup turned into a narrow lane that ran behind warehouses. Their chosen building, 2 stories higher than its neighbors, corrugated roof, external metal stairs, waited exactly where sat imagery said it would be. What the imagery hadn't shown was the couple standing at the base of the stairs, smoking, faces lit by their phones. The driver cursed under his breath. That was the conflict. Civilian presence meant delay. Delay meant missing the first vehicle doors opening. The alternate building, shorter, set back, was clean, but from there she'd lose her line into any vehicle that parked nose in. The ladder bumped as the truck stopped. One of the local attachments looked at her, question in his eyes. She made the call. "We stay," she said. "I need this angle." She hopped out, shouldered her case, and walked straight toward the couple like she belonged there. Confidence was often better than concealment. "Port control," she said in the local dialect, crisp. "Inspection on the roof. Move." They stared, startled. The woman stubbed her cigarette and pulled the man aside, mumbling apologies. Lynn didn't break stride. Up the external stairs, boots quiet, attachments behind her carrying the ladder in case the roof hatch was locked. At the top, the hatch wasn't locked. Good. She stepped onto the roof and the city opened below her. Port sheds, container stacks, the broad flat of the staging yard where Spearline would do its exchange. Haze made the lights glow like they were underwater. "Overwatch is on the roof," she reported. "Setting up." She dropped prone near the lip, keeping low, and assembled her rifle with practiced speed. Barrel in, bolt in, suppressor on. She unfolded her bipod, set the legs wide to steady on the corrugated metal. Then she pulled out her laser rangefinder, peered over the edge, and tagged key points. "Staging shed, 893 meters," she said. "North gate, 915. Southern lot, probable vehicle hold, 867. "Viking copies," Rourke said. He was still moving. "Diaz, you up?" "Secondary eyes in position," Diaz answered. "Lower roof, 3 o'clock from Overwatch. I have the blind side." That was good. They had their crossfire of eyes, if not guns. On the street below, the couple shuffled away, bored but not alarmed. No shouting, no port security called up. Her gamble on staying had worked. Headlights appeared at the far end of the port road. A string of them, 2 even to be random traffic. "Convoy visual," she said. 3 vehicles minimum." The first truck rolled into the yard and swung to park at a slight angle. Exactly what she'd feared. Nose toward the building, rear doors facing the shed, creating a shield. The haze thickened the farther the lights cut into it. Moving shapes around the truck blurred into smudges. "Overwatch, I will need descriptions," Rourke said. She could hear the engine in the background. He was getting close. "You tell me when to move." "Stand by," she said, dropping her eye to the scope. She dialed magnification up, then backed it off. The haze made high power useless. Better to go slightly wide and let her brain process motion. She watched men get out. Adult height, weapons slung. The casual but ready posture of smugglers who owned this yard. Then 2 smaller figures were pulled from the back seat of the second vehicle. Not carried. Walked, but guided firmly by the arm. Shoulders narrow, heads uncovered. One wearing something light that caught the port light wrong for an adult jacket. "Viking Overwatch," she said, voice tightening. "I have 2 juveniles on the ground. Repeat, juveniles present." There was a pause on the net. Not doubt. Absorption. "Copy juveniles," Rourke said. "We hold for your green." She tracked the second vehicle. A third smaller shape was still inside. Hunched, maybe frightened. An adult with a rifle stood too close, using the open door as partial cover. ROE was now real, not theoretical. If the broker chose to stand behind that kid, her beautiful angle would still be a no-fire. "Diaz," she said, "can you confirm Vehicle 2, passenger side?" "Stand by." "Yeah," Diaz said from his lower roof. "I see a small. That's a kid." "3 juveniles confirmed," she said. "ROE red in their vicinity." Below, engines idled, men talked. Nobody knew yet that 2 roofs above, a woman with a phoenix on her arm was watching them and deciding who was allowed to live. "Overwatch," Rourke said, all business now. "Call it when you're ready." "I will," she said, eye never leaving the glass. But not yet. The portyard shifted moods in seconds. One moment it was just idling engines and bored smugglers. The next, everything tightened. A man in a dark jacket, better dressed than the rest, the kind who didn't lift crates, stepped out from the 3rd vehicle. The broker. 2 guards flanked him. He gestured toward the shed, talking fast. "Viking Overwatch," Lynn said. "Broker is on deck, marked. He is between vehicles 2 and 3. "Copy, we see him," Rourke said. His team was in the outer approaches, tucked in shadow, waiting for her word. "You give green, we go." She was about to when the first guard noticed something. Maybe a sound, maybe just the way the haze swallowed the street. He snapped his head toward the gate, barked a warning. Another man reacted by reaching into Vehicle 2 and dragging the smallest juvenile out hard, swinging him in front of his chest like a vest. There it was. Exactly how insurgents had done it years ago. A child in the wrong place at the precise wrong time. "Stand by," Lynn snapped. "Do not move." Through her scope, the boy was all eyes and thin shoulders. The gunman pinned him with one arm, pistol in the other hand, body angled toward the shed. If she put a round through that chest from here, it would pass through the boy first. Even a perfect headshot risked over-penetration at this angle and distance. The bullet might exit and hurt the kid anyway, and the haze made his outline bleed into the man behind him. "Overwatch, what's your holdup?" Rourke demanded. He wasn't angry. He was on the mission clock. "We're burning time." "Shield in play," she said. "Juvenile used as frontal cover. ROE red." Down below, the broker started to move back toward his vehicle. Classic retreat motion. If he got inside and the convoy rolled, they'd lose everything. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears. She forced herself to breathe. This was the exact shape of the old street, the old rooftop, the boy with the radio, the choice she'd never stopped replaying. "Diaz," she said, "can you see a clean line from your angle?" "Negative," Diaz shot back. "Kid's glued to him. I can take though. Leg, maybe." "Leg won't stop him using the kid," she said. "Hold." The gunman with the boy started to backstep, dragging the child toward the rear of Vehicle 3 into deeper shadow, into a place even her glass would have trouble penetrating. If he made it there, the kid became a permanent, mobile blind spot. ROE said no. The part of her that had taken the radio boy said no. The mission said, do something. "Overwatch," Rourke said, and this time his voice was softer, like he could hear something breaking in hers. "Talk to me." She swallowed. "Gunman is using the smallest child as a primary shield. If I shoot center, I kill him." "What's your alternate?" Rourke asked. She scanned fast. The man's right arm was the anchor. If she destroyed that, he'd drop the kid. But it was a thin target at almost 900 meters in bad light. The vehicle's driver door was open. If she disabled the driver, chaos would yank the shield man's attention somewhere else. Or she could shoot a structural element, tire ground by his foot, to startle him. But every second cost them broker proximity. The gunman shifted again. The boy's head brushed his chin. The kid's mouth opened on a sound Lynn couldn't hear. Her finger settled on the trigger. This was why she'd come. To be up here instead of someone who would panic. "Viking Overwatch," she said, and was surprised to hear how level she still sounded. "I am taking a shot." "Copy your shot," Rourke said instantly. No hesitation, he trusted her to solve a problem the ROE itself couldn't solve. She exhaled, long, flattening her pulse. She rolled a fraction right to account for the wind that had picked up over the yard, touched the range dial even though she already knew the distance. She watched the shield man's elbow, the small exposed triangle between his bicep and the kid's hair. If she hit that, he'd drop. If she missed it, she might hit the child. She took up the first stage of the trigger, and the world narrowed to reticle, arm, child, breath. Cut. The shot she had lined up, the crazy, hair-thin triangle between a man's arm and a boy's head, was the shot of someone willing to gamble a child's life. Lynn was not willing. At the last fraction of a breath, she shifted. Wind had nudged right to left again, faint but real. Down below, the driver of Vehicle 3 was still seated, door open, leg out, head turned to watch the little drama with the human shield. He was the linchpin. If he was out, the vehicle wouldn't roll. The gunman would have to react, and everyone's attention would fracture. "Overwatch retasking," she said fast, before anyone could protest. "Engaging driver, Vehicle 3. She dumped the half-pulled trigger, reset her finger, swung the reticle 1.5 meters forward and down, found the driver's temple in the orange wash of the port. Lights. Bigger target, lower risk to the kid. Not the elegant sniper versus sniper shot. This was problem-solving. She pressed. The suppressed crack was swallowed by the night. 0.9 of a second later, the driver's head snapped sideways and smacked the doorframe. He collapsed back into the seat. His leg, which had been braced outside, slipped off the running board and hit the accelerator. The vehicle lurched. It wasn't much, a stupid, panicked jerk forward. But it was enough to make everyone around it flinch. The gunman holding the boy swore and looked away for a heartbeat to see what the truck was doing. The boy sagged. "Move now!" Lynn snapped, grabbing the gap. "Viking moving!" Rourke echoed, already pushing. Boots hit concrete, dark shapes fanned toward the yard. Down below, the gunman lost his clean shield. He still clutched the kid, but it wasn't glued to his chest anymore. There was space, the kind snipers prayed for. "Diaz, you have his support hand. Take it!" she called. From the lower roof, Diaz didn't hesitate. "Sending!" A sharp report, his, not hers. The gunman's forearm exploded in movement, not gore. He dropped the pistol, grip broken. Instinctively, his arm opened. Lynn rode that opening. Now she could take the man without risking the child. She was already on target, already compensated for wind. She sent a second round. This one hit the gunman high in the chest, above the boy's head, dumped him backward. The boy fell sideways, crying, but alive. "Shield neutralized," she said, breath coming faster now. "Child down but mobile." "Copy, copy," Rourke said, tone flooding with momentum. "Viking, push through, secure juveniles." The yard turned kinetic. Men shouted in 2 languages. One of the smugglers fired wildly toward the gate, nowhere close to where Rourke's team actually was. Another tried to slam the broker back into Vehicle 2. Lynn tracked the broker. He ducked behind the rear quarter panel, using the sudden confusion to do what smart prey did. Run. "Overwatch, broker is attempting to flee south side of shed," she called. "White shirt, dark jacket, moving fast." "I can't see him from here," Diaz said. His lower angle was blocked by the vehicles. "I have him," Lynn said. But even as she said it, the haze thickened around that corner, mixing with exhaust and dust. At 900 meters, with a man weaving between metal, it wasn't a shot she could take clean without risking hitting the wrong body. "Viking, he's moving," she warned. "Then we'll grab him down here," Rourke said. "You stay on the kids." He trusted her. He'd heard, through her choices, not her words, why she'd refused the first shot, why she'd chosen the driver instead, why her file had an annex. Below, 2 SEALs darted to the fallen boy, dragging him behind the bulk of a concrete bollard, there, bodies making a wall. Another scooped up the second juvenile, who was frozen beside Vehicle 2. A third child was still inside the car, crying. Lynn could see the small hands on the window. "Kid 3 still in vehicle," she said. "No threat, driver. You're clear." "Copy, clearing," came a grunt from the ground. Gunfire crackled, short, controlled. Not a firefight, just the ugly, necessary punctuation of men being stopped from escaping. Lynn let herself breathe, just once. Her hands weren't shaking, but the memory of the radio boy sat right behind her eyes. Tonight she had bent the problem around the child instead of the other way. That mattered. Movement flickered at the edge of her scope. The broker had chosen a different exit, sliding between stacked pallets toward a narrow service alley the sat imagery hadn't fully shown. If he made it there, he'd be out of her line and into the maze of port backstreets. "Broker breaking south-southeast, service alley," she snapped. "I will lose him in 5 seconds. "Viking, push on, broker," Rourke barked. "Hostages secure enough, go." Lynn swung to keep the man in her glass, but metal and mist conspired against her. This part would have to be settled up close. The yard was a tangle of noise and sharp light now. Headlamps cutting through haze, shouted commands, the thud of boots on concrete. From her roof, Lynn saw the moment the operation threatened to fracture. Rourke's main element split, half turning to shield the rescued kids, half surging after the fleeing broker toward the service alley. "Viking overwatch," she said, already tracking. "You've still got one armed near Vehicle 1. AK, dark shirt. He's looking for a shot." "Copy armed," Rourke said, breath audible as he ran. "Can you take him?" "Negative," she said. The angle was bad. Too much of the muzzle pointed toward where one of the boys cowered behind the bollard. "I do. I risk the juvenile." "Viking 2, deal with that gun!" Rourke snapped to his second element. On the ground, a SEAL peeled off, moved like a shadow around the front of the truck, and put 2 tight rounds into the gunman's chest. The man crumpled sideways, weapon clattering harmlessly. "Arm down," Lynn reported. "Kids still present, 2 mobile, 1 in vehicle." "Say again," came Diaz closer to the children from his lower roof. "I got eyes on the one in the car. He's freaking out but unhurt." "Hold him there," Lynn said. "Don't let a stray see him." Downrange, Rourke and 2 of his men hit the gap where the broker had disappeared. From above, Lynn's scope showed only slivers. Rourke's shoulder, a flash of the broker's white shirt, a spray of dust as someone stumbled. This was the moment Doctrine said, "Overwatch stays Overwatch. You do not leave your post, no matter how much you want to personally end the man who started this." Her body itched to move, to go down, to make sure the kids were actually breathing. But if she left, she'd lose the high-angle safety net. If another hidden gun popped up, no one would be above to see it. She stayed prone. "Overwatch holding position," she said into the net. "I have general eyes on alley mouth. If he breaks back toward the yard, I can take a disabling shot. Copy, hold, Rourke answered, voice tightening as he turned a corner. For a few tense seconds, all she had was audio, boots, a scuffle, someone in the local language yelling, "Don't shoot!" Then Rourke again, this time with the calm of someone who had his hands on the target. Viking actual, broker secure, he said. Repeat, HVT in custody. A pulse of relief went through the net. Small, professional, but real. They'd gotten both, kids and target. Overwatch copies, Lynn said, letting a fraction of warmth into her tone. I still have 2 armed KIA in the yard, 1 wounded crawling near Vehicle 3. Can you cover him? Rourke asked. Affirm, she said. If he reaches for a weapon, I will disable. She shifted her scope to the wounded man. He was trying to drag himself toward a dropped pistol, his hand inched out. Don't, she whispered. Though he couldn't hear her, he kept reaching. She sent a round into the concrete just beside his wrist. Chips spat up. He yelped and pulled back, hands visible. Wounded is compliant, she said. You can send medical. Copy, we'll sweep him. Below, 2 SEALs bundled the first boy, still shaking, into the cover of a vehicle. Another operator lifted the second juvenile with a practiced motion, talking low and steady. Nothing rough, nothing dismissive. They might have joked about her tattoo, but they knew how to handle scared kids. Overwatch, Diaz said, quieter now. That was clean. Weird, but clean. I prefer weird to dead, she said. Yeah, he chuckled, a short, breathy sound. Yeah, me too. Port security sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Late, as expected, Hall's voice came over the command net. All units be advised. Local response en route. We are 5 mics to exfil. Package is priority. Roger, Rourke said. We'll bring the broker and juveniles. Overwatch. You can start teardown in 2. Negative, Lynn said. I will stay on glass until last man off. Haze is still thick. I don't want someone coming back for us. There was a pause, then Rourke. Copy. Last man off. She watched them work. Fast prisoner zip, hoods, kids tucked into protected positions. It was a good op because they'd bled off speed at the start, because she'd refused to shoot through a child, because they'd built in time for her to see. That was the part she wanted command to understand later, only when the last SEAL hustled. SEAL, the last juvenile toward the convoy and the wounded smuggler was disarmed. Did she allow herself to start breaking down her rifle? She kept the scope on until the very end, eyes scanning for glints, for movement, for the second shooter that never came. Viking Overwatch, she said finally, watching their vehicles roll. Roof is clear. I am RT Bing. Good work, Overwatch, Rourke said. Not perfunctory, earnest. We'll talk and debrief. There it was. The next battlefield. Not concrete and haze, but a fluorescent lit room where someone would ask why she hadn't just taken the first shot. Where she would have to explain, again, that sometimes the harder shot wasn't the more accurate one. It was the more human one. The debrief room was brutally bright after the sodium haze of the port. White walls, plastic chairs, carafe of bad coffee. Everyone looked washed out. Rourke with dried sweat at his temples. Hall tapping notes into his tablet. Diaz leaning back, but very awake. Lynn sat at the far end of the table, sleeves rolled down again, notebook closed. A screen showed stills from helmet cams and an overhead feed. Vehicles, muzzle flashes, a small shape being yanked in front of a gunman. Frozen like that, it was obvious how close they had come. All right, Hall said, tone official. Operation Saffron Spearline, date time group 08NOV25, objective achieved. Broker in custody, 3 juveniles secured, 4 hostile KIA, 1 WIA, no friendly casualties. He looked up. We call that a win. It could have been a disaster, Rourke said flatly. Put that in too. Hall raised an eyebrow. You want that language in the AAR? I want it in the classified annex at least, Rourke said. Because if we hadn't had high overwatch and someone who gave a damn about the ROE, we'd have a dead kid on that screen. Hall flicked to the frame where the gunman was shielding the boy. In slow motion, you could see the moment the child's head lined up with the man's chest. You could also see the moment the man's attention snapped toward the jerking vehicle, right before Diaz's shot and Lynn's follow-on. Hall exhaled. Yeah, he said. Okay, that goes in. He looked at Lynn. Walk us through your decision to engage the driver first instead of the shielded gunman. She kept her voice even. At that angle with that haze, any center mass shot on the gunman would have penetrated the juvenile. ROE prohibited that. I assessed the driver as the fastest way to create disruption without violating the ROE. It worked. Risk? Hall asked. Vehicle lurch could have run someone over, she said. But it was contained. Rourke added, and it bought us a gap big enough for my element to move. Right call. Diaz lifted a hand. Also, for the record, her call let me take the guy's arm clean. If she'd tried to thread it through the kid, we'd be sitting here with a body bag. Hall typed, frowning in concentration. Fine. Overwatch decision-making, exemplary. ROE. Adhered to. Outcome. Hostages safe. He paused, then looked back at Rourke. One more thing. We need to attribute the counter-sniper kill from the shoreline intercept 2 nights ago and tonight's Overwatch to someone. Task Force guidelines say foreign officers acting in kinetic roles have to be listed in the sealed portion. Rourke glanced at Lynn. The ball was hers. She waited. If she said no, they could write it up as partner Overwatch element, faceless, forgettable, safer for her. But then some future planner might look at this op and say, we don't need that much Overwatch detail next time, and a kid would die. If she said yes, if she let Ghost 12 be named in the classified annex, then the lesson would stick. Sometimes you needed this exact capability on the roof when children were in play. Put it in the classified section, she said. Not the general report. Use my operational call sign. Hall's fingers paused. Ghost 12? Yes. Hall whistled under his breath, very low. So it was you. Diaz didn't whistle. He just looked at her forearm like he was seeing it new. Rourke nodded, satisfied. I'll add a commander's note, he said. Recommend future operations involving juvenile leverage secure high-angle overwatch with demonstrated counter-sniper capability. Cite this op as example. That's good, Lynn said. That was what she'd wanted from the start. Not glory, not a medal she couldn't wear here. Just a written reason for someone to put the next her on the next roof. Debrief wrapped. People stood, chairs scraped. Hall left to file the report. Diaz lingered. He tipped his chin at her sleeve. So that's not a joke tattoo, he said. It was never a joke, she said. He hesitated, then said, for what it's worth, I'm going to shut that down if I hear it again. Thank you. He left. Rourke stayed. You could have let us take all the credit, he said. You didn't have to put your name, your real name on it. It's not my real name, she said. It's the one that belongs with shots like that. He smiled, small and tired. Well, that name's got weight in a few places. He straightened. You staying on Saffron a while? As long as they let me, she said. Then I'll make sure they let you, he replied, and left. When the room was empty, she sat for a moment, letting the fluorescent hum settle. Outside, the bass was winding back to its usual rhythm. Tomorrow there'd be another brief, another target. Maybe one without kids. Maybe not. She stood, tugged her sleeve up just enough to look at the phoenix and the rifle and the small, hidden 12. The ink was still bright. A little salt from the night air, crusted along the cuff. Shots stay with you. She rolled the sleeve back down, covering the tattoo again. Not to hide, but to carry it quietly, the way she always had, and walked out into the hot, restless air of the phobie.